2017 brought Hawaii and the rest of the world highly anticipated events and unexpected sea change. Which events and what news stories had the biggest impact on you? From emotional accomplishment that filled us with pride, to natural disasters and human suffering that changed us forever. Tonight's live broadcast and live stream of Insights on PBS Hawaii start now.
Welcome to Insights on PBS Hawaii. I'm Beth-Ann Kozlovich. It's been a big year for national and global news events, extensively covered by all forms of media. Tonight, our panel of seasoned and student journalists will look back on the events of 2017 they felt had the biggest impact on our local community. We look forward to hearing from you. What stories would you pick? You can email, call, or tweet your comments, and you'll find a live stream of this program at pbs.org and the PBS Hawaii Facebook page. Now to our guest. Yunji Nies is one of the regular guests, regular Insights moderators, usually sitting in this chair, and she probably does a better job than I'm doing at the moment. She was a White House and national correspondent for ABC News before returning home to the islands in 2012. She anchored the evening news for KITV and is currently anchoring digital news content for the Star Advertiser. Daryl Huff is a moderator for Insights and has worked in the broadcast journalism industry for 40 years. He's been a reporter, producer, executive producer, and currently is a special projects producer with Hawaii News Now. Spencer Oshita is the current editor-in-chief of Ka Leo O Hawai, the student newspaper for the University of Hawaii. He is a European history and English major with minors in American Studies and political science. Rebecca Meyer is a junior and second-year journalism student at Sacred Hearts Academy. She also is a features editor of the Academy's newspaper, Ka Leo, and a student journalist for HIKI NŌ Student News Network. Welcome to all of you, and thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, we gave you some sort of categories to be able to look back at the year, because sometimes it's hard to remember everything that has happened in a year past. And one of those categories we titled Go Figure. So I want to go right around the table and see from you what it is you think that would fit into that category, and we'll talk about it a little bit. Daryl, I'll start with you.
Well, to me, the biggest go figure story was like the Ka Leo O Hawai investigation and how the simple theft of a mailbox could turn into essentially an investigation that unseated the police chief, a top deputy prosecutor, led to indictments, really the biggest corruption case in Hawaii history, all from, you know, what seemed like a ridiculous mailbox theft. And so to me, that was a kind of a go figure story. And as we reported it at Hawaii News Now, we constantly had to go back and say, we have to explain to people this is more than just a mailbox, over and over and over again. And it was extremely complicated. But I think that what people got out of it was an idea of how, you know, it's rarely the crime, it's usually the cover-up. And that's what this looks like. It's been indictments, there'll be a trial and so on, but that's what this looks like. That's what the federal prosecutors believe happened. So I think that's a go figure that took someone from outside the state, a federal prosecutor from San Diego, to come in and do their thing and find out all this very incriminating stuff.
Although some would say that that's exactly what it would have to take in this very insular world.
I think that a lot of people feel that way, yeah.
All right, who has a go figure story for me?
Well, I'll jump in on this one.
All right, go ahead.
You know, we had a legislative session. The last one was arguably one of the least productive in decades. I think they passed, what, 11% of the initiatives that they had set out to do. But then they're called back and they rescue rail in, you know, at lightning speed. So it just shows when lawmakers' feet, you know, are put to the fire, they can actually get things done. So go figure Hawaii Ledge that, you know, that's what it takes to actually get something that monumental passed. Now, whatever you think about rail itself, the fact that they're able to take such action so quickly and actually get something done, you know, perhaps that bodes well for the next session. Maybe they're going to be a little more productive this time around.
Wouldn't hold my breath.
A lot of people might not, but the point that, that you're making is that when there is a real reason for them to come back and actually do something, and they feel well motivated,
right,
that there's a good chance that something will happen. And the real flip side of that is well, where wasn't the what happened to the motivation earlier on, and why couldn't this have happened in the session and not have to call a special session in the first place?
Yeah, exactly right. And on my way here, I was talking to my husband, and he said, the better go figure is those two wahine who set out on the boat, and then that whole false alarm. And did they really? Were they out there for 5 months? Were they not? Go figure.
That's a really good go figure too, especially when our heartstrings were being played on that one, and then all these other bits and pieces come out that maybe they could have been rescued a lot sooner or not even had a problem. You have been very quiet, and I want to talk to you a little bit, Rebecca, because there are stories out there that you as a young person looking at the rest of the world must have thought, how can this be? Was there something that you just couldn't get your head around, thinking that this could possibly be happening?
Actually, I thought that North Korea's nuclear bomb threat on Hawaii was honestly so surprising to me, that we could be experiencing something close to a world war, and that I would be living through it and possibly see it happen one day, and how it'll affect the people around me, my family, the future, and also Hawaii itself.
I think that goes more beyond the go figure territory, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But some of the stories then that just you kind of go back to the go figure.
I have to say it's been a very interesting year in general. I've only lived for 20 years, but
We won't hold it against you.
Sure. I have this problem, I think, with looking back over this year, because this is really the first time that I've felt that I'm living history. I'm a history major, as you said, very interested in studying it. And when I'm seeing the events play out that are playing out in my textbooks, right, playing out in those books, like Rebecca was talking about, this nuclear threat with North Korea, having these alarms, for example, the first time it's gone off since the Cold War, right, which I was not alive to see.
Look at you.
There we go. And yet here we are in this era where things like a North Korean nuclear threat, things like Donald Trump becoming president, right, are things that are happening. And you get a real sense, I think, particularly from my perspective, that history is being built, it's being made, which is sort of an obvious thing if you think about it. But I think it was very hard, I think, for me to feel that way until I reached this year and saw everything that happened.
Do you feel part of history being made?
Definitely, definitely, because my generation is going to we're going to start setting a new path for our futures, and we're changing the world by starting new initiatives, and it's us that are eventually going to make our own future, and that can affect how we live in the future.
And for those who were little kids in the Cold War, just coming out of that time, to hear that siren again was a pretty spooky moment. I was in a meeting, and all of a sudden everyone was aware that the siren was wailing, and a complete silence fell into the room, and everyone remarked that we were listening to the siren now.
I find it very interesting that the young people are so focused on the North Korea thing, because when it was true nuclear annihilation that we were expecting, when we were kids, one shot was the end of the world, literally the end of the world. And then in Hawaii, the civil defense officials were trying to explain to us, well, it won't be that bad. It'll be only 15,000 people or so will die instantly, and there'll be maybe another 5,000 that die later. And then we're going to be ready because you all have 15 days worth of food in your house. And to me, that was the freaky thing about that story. It's more like, okay, and I think it was Nikita Khrushchev who said, if there's actually a war, the living will envy the dead. And that's how I felt about that. So, but when I hear the young people talking about it, it reminds me of how scared I was all the time. And I know, is that how you feel? Like, is it just, was it really scary?
It is scary, and I hear other classmates talking in school about if this is gonna happen, how they're gonna react. All of us are scared. Are we gonna be separated from our families? What if it happens during school? I even remember reading an article about how we can be separated for at least 2 days because we have to block off all the outside air, how long we're gonna be away from our families, and if they're even safe. We won't never know.
And quite possibly for more than 2 days, too. Are you happy with the state's response?
You know, it's so interesting to hear this brought up as a concern, because for me, I feel like I read it and then I don't really think about it. And yes, I heard the siren, and it definitely, there is a chilling sort of feeling when you hear that, because that is it's a visceral thing. But I don't have 15 days worth of food in my house, and I'm a mom. I'm the one who's supposed to be responsible and to be packing up and to be ready to go. And so, that perspective is so fascinating to me. Maybe I need to take it a little bit more seriously. In my own life, I know that my family, we were thinking about going to South Korea because we have relatives there, and we've decided to hold that off, because at least going to the peninsula seems like a bad idea. But to think that it would actually come to Hawaii, is not something that I've really thought about in great detail. I don't know if you feel the same way.
It's a very difficult situation, because on one hand you want to be prepared. On the other hand, you know that there's only so much you can do to prepare, and what will you do with 15 minutes depending upon where you are. And in fact, is it going to be survivable depending upon where you are? All of those things that play in, and knowing that you can't succumb to fear on a daily basis, because you still have to live your life. And that's the most important thing, which obviously all of us are doing, but being a little bit more prepared for other disasters might be helpful too. All right, let's lighten the mood a little bit. What about the number of people running for lieutenant governor? All of a sudden, this lieutenant governor race has gotten so popular, and you wonder if suddenly that there's going to be something new about the job that's going to make it far and away more than just having an office, a phone, and a staff.
Depends on how much work you really want to do. I mean, I get the impression that it's just a placeholder for people that feel like they can't win another race, especially on a statewide basis. It gets them statewide name recognition. It gets them, perhaps first in line for when this governor or the next governor, is replaced. So it is a bizarre situation. I've never seen anything like it. I remember a few years ago we had like 8 prominent politicians all running for Congress at the same time. Mm-hmm. There's all these ambitious politicians with no place to go, and they don't want to go back to work. So.
Go figure.
Is that a mean thing to say? I'm not really sure.
Well, I mean, that seat can lead to a number of places. Look at Brian Schatz, right? So that can be a very big stepping stone depending on, the political climate. And I think you're right that these are people who might be termed out and looking for a new venue, looking for another hand. It really will depend also on who the governor is, right? Because how those two work together, one definitely dictates the other. So I think that it's very interesting the way our state does this, that they run so separately and that they don't run together, because it does seem like a house divided depending on who the voters choose.
Right, because it's not a true ticket.
Right.
So what's wrong with David Ige? There are a lot of people who have said that, he's done a decent job, he's a decent man, but that he just doesn't have the kind of charisma, perhaps. But hey, we all knew what we were getting into. He wasn't propagating himself as being anything other than what he was.
I think the challenge for Governor Ige is that, on the one hand, his personality, he is not particularly outgoing. He's not particularly, I hesitate to use this word because he is in his own way articulate, but he's not articulate in a strongly
charismatic
he's
sort
not
of way.
He's not a soundbite machine, and he's also at roughly the highest office in a party that's completely divided. We've only got one party really functionally in this state, and within that party are these warring factions, and it's very difficult to get anything done with people working against you who are in the caucus with you. It's just a much more difficult situation to be in than if you actually had an opposing party that you could be fighting with. But I'm kind of curious what the younger people think about the political scenario. Do you guys pay much attention to local politics anymore? You probably do, because you're like a political science major.
I do, yeah. The local politics scene is very interesting. And I find it's really, I think, especially for Hawaii voters, sort of the only political scene that you can really have a choice in, per se. I mean, as you know, right, Hawaii is in such a late time zone that by the time the national election concludes, we're basically like,
Person
we
non
voted
grata in some
Democrat.
ways.
It's, put the 4 votes in Hillary Clinton's column and we're done. In a very different way, though, the local elections are fascinating to me because, what they sometimes turn out to be is, in this particular case with the lieutenant governor race, is sort of these interesting, maybe action-packed, we're not sure, but certainly populated race. And I think the interesting thing about David Ige, I went to school with the daughter of his campaign manager back when he ran for governor, and so she would talk my ear off and tell me a lot of things. But I think what was very interesting to me about David Ige at the time is that a lot of the campaign, at least from my perspective, seemed to be, well, I'm not Neil Abercrombie, and he ran very well on that. I think it was very compelling to people. And I think that we're getting to a point now in this sort of local election discussion that I'm going to go out and venture a guess to say that maybe one of the reasons why the lieutenant governor race is getting so popular is because maybe some politicians perceive David Ige as being not particularly a strong politician, even though he is the governor. And I think that it's, as Yunji said, it's a stepping stone, the lieutenant governor position is. And so maybe we'll see people running for lieutenant governor, maybe running for governor in 4 years.
Oh, sure.
Some of our audience have already called in or brought us some questions in various ways, including this one, asking why aren't we seeing more media coverage of homeless working families on Windward in the North Shore, caused in part, they believe, by booming illegal vacation rentals. Why aren't we paying more attention to what's going on the Windward side? We seem to see a lot of what's going on in Honolulu, and we hear about the sweeps. Yunji, what do you think about that?
Well, I mean, I think that if you're not in Metro Honolulu, you probably always feel like your issues are being ignored, and I think that this particular issue affects so much of the island. That just tends to be where the concentration is of the homeless themselves, right? I think you look at what happened in Kaka'ako and with the park closure, and so the visuals there are so strong for media coverage. I mean, you have a whole park being closed and hundreds of people being pushed out, so of course that's going to warrant a lot of coverage. If you have pockets of homeless throughout these more rural communities, I think that that's a different conversation that could be a little bit tougher to cover. I don't necessarily think that there's not an interest. The homeless issue is such a challenge for our state, and it's such a challenge, I think, for the press too, because how do you cover this in a different way? I think the audience at times feels like, I've seen this, I know this, I live this, what new is there to say? So that might contribute to why there's not as much, coverage in that area. Daryl, what do you think?
There's two issues in that question, right? One is the illegal vacation rentals question, and the other is the homeless question. Whether one leads directly to the other on the Windward side, it's hard to say. I mean, it could be there's more people on the Windward side because they're getting pushed out of urban Honolulu and they've found more comfortable places. The vacation rental issue doesn't get a lot of coverage because the politicians really aren't doing anything about it. I think most people know what the issues are, particularly people who live in areas where there's a lot of vacation rentals. But the average person couldn't afford a house in those areas anyway. You're talking about Kahala, Kailua, Kaneohe, near the beach. I mean, that's not going to contribute to a homeless family becoming homeless. Overall, the prices of housing is crazy, and there's not enough affordable housing. Why the media doesn't cover it on the affordable housing side is we're busy covering the failure to generate affordable housing. As far as the vacation rental thing, the politicians are as locked up on that one and incapable of resolving that issue as the media is of covering it. I mean, it's just, when something moves, I think you'll see some coverage.
As you and your friends talk about what's happening in our state and that you see, what do you view, or how do you view the homeless situation? How do you think that this is being covered in a way that is meaningful or maybe not meaningful to you?
I think that the government is definitely paying attention to the problems, and as I've seen when I pass through Kaka'ako, they are taking initiatives to try and clean up the problem and offering alternatives to those who need homes. And from a student's point of view, I think they're taking the necessary steps. And that's because I don't think much of people my age would understand what more the government can do. So for us, it seems fine, but for other people who know what they can do and can improve, it may seem different to them.
We've got another question. Why is all the reporting about building more low-income housing instead of building higher income jobs like film and TV and digital media and music so that people can actually afford homes? Why are we talking about the low end when we should be maybe floating all boats?
I mean, it is true. In Hawaii, we have highest cost of housing, and we reward that with low salaries, right? There have been a lot of initiatives from the state to try to bring in tech, biotech, different tax incentives. That stuff takes so much time. You know, if I'm somebody with an idea, you know, if he's got an idea to start a company tomorrow or when he graduates, you know, that might not be generating that kind of revenue for years and years. So I don't know, all of those kind of incentive programs, they're great, but they're not going to, you know, bring us up to where we can afford that Kahala house that you're talking about anytime soon.
Yeah, the lack of diversity in the economy, certainly we do cover that a lot. I mean, but it's, you know, how many times can you do the same story over and over and over again? And, you know, when an initiative works and some jobs are generated, we cover it. But it's such a drop in the bucket compared to the major industries, compared to tourism, which, you know, that's where the money is. That's where the investment goes. You know, and you know, it's another one of those issues where if something was, you know, it's like, okay, what's the media supposed to do? Are we supposed to say over and over again, nothing's happening here, you should do something about it? You know,
Well, we've seen how effective that is.
Yeah, exactly. And so what we do is we look for this, you know, we do something called solutions-oriented journalism, where we try and identify something that's working. Where is it? It's not out there. Now, the University of Hawaii is a great university, you know, but, you know, I know from my own family situation, I don't know that my kids are going to come back here. You know, there's just so much more opportunity over there. So, you know, it's a cart and a horse kind of thing too. If you can't afford to live here, you're not going to come and work here. And if you have a tech job that could make you more money and buy you more stuff on the mainland, that's where you're going to go. How we could change that dynamic is beyond me. But I'd really be curious about, you know, when you guys look at your prospects, I mean, what do you think is going to happen to you? What kind of choices you have?
Yeah, I don't know. Oh, I'm about to go into a dangerous territory here.
Oh, that's okay.
Please
we'll
do.
go with you.
No. I don't know if you've heard of meme culture, but that tends to be a very popular thing among, you know, people who are social media, you know, people. And I think, you know, very typically speaking, when it comes to looking at job prospects for millennials and, you know, college students, it's a lot about, you know, okay, just graduated from college, have my bachelor's degree, look for jobs, and every job, entry level or not, expects 3 to 5 years of experience off the bat. And so, you know, there's this sort of running joke that's sort of like, well, I thought all I needed was a bachelor's degree. I don't have the job experience. And I think that's that sort of mentality about the job market is not a localized thing. I think very much so millennials, college students, I mean, I don't know about you, high school students maybe, you know, see the job market as something that's, you know, sort of scary. Where are we going to find ourselves? You know, can we afford to live in a place like Hawaii? And I don't have an answer for you necessarily.
But I do have another question.
Sure, go ahead.
And that fits in well with what you're just talking about. We have a question from a viewer who says, would the young people like to see more reporting and political initiatives on building modern 21st century higher income jobs? Would more young people stay in Hawaii if we grew industries that fit the gifts and talents of local youth? What do you think?
You know what? It's sort of one of those solutions that, you know, sounds great. Let's do it. And then the next question is, well,
who's going to do it?
Right? Who's going to do it? How do we do it? Where is it going to come from? you know, I've got a lot of friends who, you know, are like, no, I'm never coming back. You know, I went to high school with them here, and they're like, no, we found better paying jobs, you know, elsewhere.
Is that purely an economic decision, or is that a decision, you know, is that a desire to explore the world, to, you know, see a different culture, or see a different state, or, you know, have access to different industry? I mean, where does that come from? Are we talking purely because the salaries aren't there, or that the cost of living is too high, or is it something else that's driving people out of the state?
I think that culture of trying to get an experience is why a lot of people, at least that I know, went away for college. You know, they wanted to experience something different. And I think once they got there, you know, and realized how less expensive it was to really live, you know, I think it hit home. I can't really say in every case whether or not, you know, that's true, but certainly I think that when you take a look at, you know, my age group, getting a job, holding a job, right, having a career that you do for 30, 40, 50 years.
Wait a minute, you actually think somebody's going to have a career that's going to go 30, 40, 50 years?
And that's
because
what I'm
really,
saying.
that's not what social science shows us.
Yeah.
I mean, you probably will have 7, 8, maybe 10 different careers in your lifetime.
Absolutely. I think that's where, you know, we're headed. I think the age of starting a career, keeping a career, doing the same thing for such a long time, I think that's not going to hold as much water with people in my generation as maybe it did before.
Or certainly not with the gig economy.
Well, there you go. You know, a lot of people are going into those sort of task rabbit things where they just, you know, they do this one job, $20, right? Another job, $30, right? And you just sort of, you know, gather all these jobs up every day, and that's what they do. And I think that kind of consumerist economy works in some ways for people that are connected through this sort of social media, the online, which is getting to be a very interesting topic now that we've reached net neutrality. But I'll leave that for.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought up net neutrality, and I want to make sure that we get to that. We will do that a little bit later in the show, but I want to ask you how you feel about all of this, Rebecca, because here you're not even out of high school yet, and there's a lot of conversation here that could make a person blanch. And yet you say you want to be a journalist.
Yes, I don't know if it's just the culture of my school, that the atmosphere that they surround us in, that they tell us that we can succeed. And I believe that I can. And they offer us so many opportunities, such as being here. And when I do these things, I feel like I'm preparing myself to become successful in the future. And I want to venture out and try and see if I can succeed. And that may include leaving the islands, which I understand. And a lot of people, I can relate to this because I think the same way, but a lot of my friends want to leave this island because they've grown up here their whole life. They don't get to experience a lot of things other places do, like snow. That's one of the things that they want to go to the mainland for and experience. And I want to do the same thing too. And I think that's what is drawing people away from this, because Hawaii, because we don't get to go out off the island so often, and being able to see this world and experience it and see if we like it and succeed in it, that's what we want to do.
Yunji, that sounds a little bit like your life in reverse.
Yeah, I was just thinking the same thing. You know, I left, I went to high school on the mainland. My parents are divorced, and I was gone for almost 20 years. And then the pull of the islands was so strong, the pull to be back with family and wanting to be part of this community was so strong that I did come back. But I'm glad that I had that time to build my career and to explore other states. And, you know, I lived in the South for a number of years. I lived in Washington for a number of years, and I think it was very informative for me just as a person and as a journalist, and just to grow in that way.
So Yunji, do you think that it's absolutely important for someone to leave the islands to be able to come back and do a better job than if someone stays here their entire career?
You know, I really think it depends on the industry, because I think, you know, for a lot of industry here, a lot of business, it's where you went to high school, right? And who you know, and, you know, who your uncle is.
That's so insular.
It is so insular, but it can be so important depending on the industry. You know, for what I do, I felt like it was necessary to leave. I don't know that that's necessarily the case. I know a lot of journalists who have stayed here their entire careers and are extremely successful. So I do think it's industry specific.
Yeah, journalism in particular, we generally do expect people are going to go away to the mainland for a little while. It's there's a lot of competition for the jobs that are here in that field in particular, and go into a smaller market. It's kind of complicated, but basically a small market is where you can get that experience, that'll get you a job back here.
But I mean, there are plenty of other industries where it's better to stay in Hawaii and it's better to grow that network, right here at home. So I just think that.
Obviously, this is a topic that has got everybody going, but let's get back more to some of the stories that we asked you to think about. Now, we've got lots of things that have happened, and some of them are bigger, some of them are smaller, but a very important thing is that HPD has new leadership now. And you mentioned earlier about the Ka Leo case, but for Susan Ballard, what would you tell her? What is it you think it's important for her to know as woman police chief? This has been a big thing, but how does she really make an impact in a way that will create trust or increase whatever trust people may still have with HPD?
Well, I think that she's already taken some steps to opening up HPD. HPD was a completely closed up organization. They had the least public information coming out of the department than almost any big city police department in the country. Everything was on paper. You had to physically go down there to find anything. And then the other big factor was that Chief Ka Leo actually, had his side of the department that were his buddies. And the people that were indicted ultimately were all close personal friends of the Ka Leos. And that was the kind of corruption that was there. It might not have been taking bribes from somebody, it wasn't, and so the department was fractionalized. The people who have now taken office were all people who were excluded by the Ka Leos. So whether you're just gonna have a new faction taking over and doing the same thing again remains to be seen. But we've already started to see more officers coming out, talking to the cameras, explaining what's going on. Crime Stoppers, you'll notice, a lot more videos that they're putting out. Finally, they're showing security camera videos of people who are committing crimes so they could say, can you help us find this person? That would never have happened under the old regime. The chief personally told us, he didn't trust the media, he didn't like the media, he didn't particularly think that the media had anything to do with the success of his department. So I think she's been in the police department long enough to know what she needs to do, and it looks to me like they're starting to change, and that is a real sea change. That department is in for some big changes under the new leadership.
A sea change, and also speaking a lot of truth to power in a way that we haven't seen before, in reverse in a way, out to those of us who have been listening and looking for that sea change. We had some other issues where we talked some serious truth to power. I'm thinking about Hawaii's challenge to the Trump travel ban, and we've just seen how all of that has played out, but that put Hawaii very much in the spotlight.
I mean, I think that's very interesting, and it perhaps set Doug Chin up to run for Congress. So, it definitely, there's a political component to that whole lawsuit that's there as well. But Hawaii being right out front on that issue, I think speaks a lot to the values that we have as a community of immigrants. And I think that that's something that, depending on your politics, of course, you may or may not have supported that initiative. And there was a lot of concern, of course, about the cost of a lawsuit like that, but there have been steps taken so that the state is not, there's a Washington, D.C. firm that is putting a lot of man hours in pro bono. Yeah, so I think that, it definitely puts Hawaii on the map in an interesting way, and it gives us an opportunity to talk about our own heritage, just as, the melting pot, if you will, of the country. But I do want to go back to your point about HPD, because I think that it's very interesting, the leadership change. Of course, the reforms that you're talking about, I think, are great for the public, because the more information that we have about the crimes in our community, the safer we are. But the other thing is that just the optics of having a woman in charge in that office. I mean, this is the first time they call that not a glass ceiling, a concrete ceiling, right? So, I mean, I'd be interested just to hear from you about how you feel when you see that there's now a woman running the police department in our community. That has to be, I think it's a monumental change. I wonder if, someone younger than me feels the same.
I think that it's a big step for female leaders, because seeing what she can accomplish can inspire other younger girls who want to become a police officer or the head of this department. My sister wants to be a police officer, and I had doubts as well too. I'm thinking, oh, there's all men in police department, and it's a male-dominant job. But then she has her goals set on becoming a police officer. She's already researching colleges, different programs that can help her put her a step ahead of what other people might do. And men might take this for granted because they think, oh, because we're men, we will get this job. And so they don't put in the extra effort that a woman might do to be in that position. And my sister is a year younger than me. She's only a sophomore, and she's already looking at all these different opportunities that can help her put her ahead of everyone else.
But Becca, when she saw that we now have a woman police chief, did that change her mind at all in terms of wanting to maybe accelerate what she was doing, or not change her mind, but make it even more firm?
I think this just gave her affirmation that she can do it. She was never wavering as far as I know, and this just makes her feel even better and like she can actually accomplish this.
I mean, that's a wonderful change. And if you think about it, HPD has, I think we're 200 officers short right now in terms of, you know, they,
at least.
Every class they're trying to recruit more and more. If we could get more female recruits in those classes, that would be wonderful for our community. I mean, I just think that having someone, even if you don't necessarily want to be a police officer, but seeing a woman in charge in that role, I think for young girls, I think it's really monumental.
Well, you know, if I go ahead and jump in here, but the other thing is the police department under Ka Leo O Hawai had a problem with women. I mean, the domestic violence, you know, the way
That's just where I was going with this.
Yeah.
So this would have a ripple effect.
There's a
throughout the
lot of
community.
women that would not report domestic violence because they didn't trust the police officers were going to handle it for them. They felt like their complaints weren't being taken seriously by, you know, an all group of male officers, and particularly when a male police officer was the suspect in domestic violence, there was an awful lot of protection that went on of those officers. And that was almost a higher level of corruption, and it was actually more important to a lot of the people who were putting pressure on the police department than the mailbox thing. It was, you know, it was the police department's problem with women, and it is really, you know, I think that's probably the most significant change that you'll see. I'd love to see more women in the department. You made a great point, it's a great story, because it will change everything when it comes to the relationship of the department to the community.
Let's move on. Just in the interest of time, we have so much to cover. We've just heard about, well, not just, but in recent times, about former Kamehameha school students coming forward concerning sexual assault that happened years ago. Clearly, we've seen this happen within the Catholic Church, but now to hear this coming forth out of Kamehameha schools during the Michael Chun years and beyond, or before, that's on one hand distressing. On the other hand, at least women are feeling, or young women are feeling, that they can come forth and say something about that. Where do you think this is going to go as we are now in this era of Me Too?
I was really, really proud to meet those men who were mostly about my age that you know, came out about the abuse that they suffered.
Sorry, I said women. Sorry.
It's okay, and what was, well, in very many ways, those are parallel stories, right? The Me Too movement and this. For these men, it was very much a Me Too movement. They found each other. They realized, holy cow, I was alone all those years suffering, thinking I was the only one or one of only a couple, and to discover that there were at least 30, maybe more, that suffered for years under this.
We're talking decades. Yeah.
Well, most of them went in as middle school students and got out when they were juniors and seniors in high school. So they spent all those years being abused, sometimes once a week, sometimes twice a month, you know, by this individual, and they had no idea what was happening. But
the span of this, I mean, when you think about this, could be going on.
It was 19 in the late 19. I have to remember this. It was from basically like 68 all the way up to 91.
That's a lot of time for abuse to be going on in a school and have it be kept.
Yes, but I think the thing that impressed me most about that story was the men who suffered so long, who pulled together, and then just in recent days, you know, for some of the stories that we did and the newspaper did, were willing to tell these stories that they were never willing to tell. I really think that what they did will make kids now safer. You know, and I'm really, really proud of that. You know.
Well, let's talk to a kid for 1 second. Forgive me for calling you that, but in the context of the people around this table, as you are the youngest person, as you listen to this story, as you see what is happening with the Me Too movement across the country, how does that make you feel about your future?
I think it will inspire my generation to stand up for things that they know is wrong, because not per se in those days, but seeing how all these people come out and they have courage to come publicly out with what happened to them, it'll only inspire other people who have that same problem to come out. And they're teaching us this in school too. Actually, in one of my classes, we've been dedicating about 2 weeks worth of classes to how we, if we are a victim, how we can stand up and say all the different say what happened to us, and use all the different resources that are made available to us. And not only as victims, but as bystanders, be upstanders, and help those people if they are struggling to find their voice.
You're in a generation slightly above where Becca is. How are you assessing the Me Too movement and just generally what we're seeing with so many people now feeling that it's okay to be talking about some very serious past wrongs?
You know, I don't know if I've lived long enough to be qualified to say this, but it's about time.
My mother would agree with you.
Well, there you go. I find this to be an extraordinarily fascinating movement, because on the one hand, you have so many women who are now finding success in coming out and saying, hey, this happened to me, and then actually seeing a result from that.
They're finding success and solidarity.
Right.
Yeah.
Not just denial, or not just years and years of court battles and media attention, but now they're seeing almost very suddenly and quickly, the people who did this to them, the people who were in power, falling very quickly as well. There are implications to having an environment in which the court of public opinion is infinitely more important than a real court. But I think that the movement itself has represented for a lot of people that speaking truth to power in this age particularly is effective. What I find even more fascinating about this particular Kamehameha story, as you sort of may find a similarity in the national story of Kevin Spacey, that men are coming out and saying, things happen to us.
Too, right.
And to admit that kind of thing in sort of a space where men are maybe expected to be more masculine, or expected to not be
the victim,
vulnerable, or be the victim, right? And so to see this story and have these victims come out and say, not only me too, but that this is an impactful thing to see. I just think that's what's so very great about having it come out.
Do you think that there's any chance of this having a moment where it's also going to see more overcompensation for the fact that this is now having a moment, and that there might be a real downside to any of this? Is there one? Anybody else jump in here?
Well, speaking from the middle-aged man's perspective, we have had to have conversations in the workplace about what's appropriate and what's not. Not that I would say that anybody that I know that I know of, or myself, has done anything inappropriate. But you rack your brain, you look back at your past, you go, was I always on track with my own behavior? So that's the first question you have to ask yourself. Then the next thing is, we do, people getting. I think you're talking about people like Garrison Keillor or Al Franken, who were, may have been, someone might argue that these guys were caught up as opposed to being absolute predators. That there's levels of predation that are out there that are just astounding. But, I don't think there's going to be any negative ramifications of this. I mean, it's kind of shattering for a lot of people, but I think that when you really think about it, it is time for us to recognize the impact of our behavior on other people.
I mean, it is really interesting to think about looking at your own past and thinking about, you know, the sins of 30 years ago now viewed through the lens of our cultural norms of today and what was acceptable then. Obviously, you're right, we're talking about levels of predation that are very different.
That was sort of what Dustin Hoffman said.
Right, that you're talking about, you know, someone like Harvey Weinstein who's accused of, you know, full rape, and then someone like Al Franken whose behavior, depending on who you believe, you know, may or may not be as offensive you know, to force someone out of Congress. But I really like what you were saying about that this is affecting both men and women. There was an NPR poll that just came out that said it was, you know, over 60% of women, but also nearly 30% of men said that they had been the victim of sexual harassment at some point in their careers. And I thought that was really interesting because
we don't usually talk about the men.
We don't talk about the men, and in all of this, you know, even with the Time magazine cover and the, you know, the Silence Breakers being the People of the Year, I think there's one man in that whole cover story. So I think, you know, maybe that's the next conversation as this continues to evolve. It'll be interesting to see how this affects the workplace. You know, newsrooms, as you both know, are crass places where, you know.
And usually run by men.
And that too. How does this change the culture? We know that, of course, you know, rape, sexual assault, things like that, obviously not okay. But as men and women relate to one another, you know, how does that change? I don't know.
You know,
All right, I'm gonna just stop you right there for
Okay.
a second because we have a few other things that I want to get to, and our time is beginning to run just a little bit short. We could talk about this for hours, but you're beginning to get to sort of the silver lining of a very horrendous story, and that's a good thing. But we had some other really good things happen this last year. Let's talk about the Kahawiki village. I mean, that by itself, if you talk about bringing a community together and making something happen, what a good example. I mean, certainly Dwayne Carrizo and everyone could have done it by themselves if they had wanted to, but the idea of bringing everyone in together to be able to have a stake and feel like they were a stakeholder in this, and which will be a wonderful thing for when it opens, and for those 150 families who are able to live there,
Well,
not very far from where we are right now.
And even more important, the model that it provides, because basically the government got out of the way. And that's what the government has to do, and that's what they're unwilling to do. They got out of the way. They basically said, here's some land, here's some infrastructure, go for it, guys. And Carrizo got the whole development community together, came up with some creative ideas, and bam, within 6 months, it's up. The government could not ever do that. But getting government officials to let go of their control of these things is.
But you're right, they did in this
hugely
case, and so now this becomes precedent.
Well, we talk about public-private partnerships all the time. I mean, this is an example of public-private partnership, as you said, actually really working out. And, you know, it's so interesting because there were these photographs, I think, last week of the Nimitz sweep. You know, you see all these people under the viaduct being swept away, and right in the background, you see these houses that are coming up. And, you know, as painful as those photographs were, to me, the highlight was those houses in the back and the hope that is going to be coming out of that. Those are young families that are going to be moving in there. They're going to be working down, for example, at Mrs. Cayetano's laundry. I mean, they're going to have jobs. There's going to be services. There's going to be daycare, all of that together. This is really going to lift these families out of that situation. And so finally, we have a homeless story that actually has, as you said, a silver lining, a happy ending. I mean, it feels really good to see that.
Well, it will, we hope, come January when they start moving in. Think back a moment to last June. Remember last June? The Hokulea came home. That was really a story that gave so much pride to, I think, everyone. I don't think you'd be watching that, whether you were at home on television or whether you were lucky enough to be there, and not feel this tremendous sense of pride, especially for you.
I was actually there when the Hokulea came in.
That's why I'm asking you.
Yes. So I was with the canoes that came in with the Hokulea, as well as the other canoes, boats that were coming in. And we were talking about how young people want to leave the islands and want to experience something new. But it's times like this where we actually take pride in where we come from, because I can't think of any other state that has something like the Hokulea, something that went around the world, experienced so many different cultures, to bring it back home, and successful with all these people using stars to navigate rather than technology. And it's just that we accomplished this people from our island accomplished this, and it's something that we definitely need to take pride in.
And also the pride in your culture, right?
Yes.
Anybody else want to chime into that one?
You know, I think it was a monumentous occasion. It's a time when we get to look back and say, you know, this is an integral part of local culture, Hawaiian culture, and thinking about the ways in which it brought a community together for this occasion, and in some ways it brought the global community together. I think that's what made it so wonderful, is that it touched so many hearts around the world, and you could really tell. You know, I was not there, unfortunately, but I did get to watch, and I think it was just a great thing to feel as you were watching.
Touching hearts and spreading a lot of information that otherwise wouldn't be as perhaps meaningful as it was given in that context.
You know, the reason it was inspiring to me was because I covered a lot of the original Hawaiian Renaissance movement, you know, the Kaho'olawe and so on, and I recognized how far this movement has come, you know, and I know Thompson's father was involved, you know, at the very beginning, and it was just amazing to see how far, you know, that boat sank almost once, and they had the swamping off of Maui when they lost Eddie Aikau. You know, it's like to come, all of those stories came together in that one moment, and that was really something.
Before I let you go, I want to ask you this one question. When we all gather next year, this time, what story do you hope won't be in the mix? What story do you hope will maybe die on the vine? Something that we've been talking about that you hope won't be in the news feed next year?
I hope this Ka Aloha case will finally be brought to rest. I mean, this, as Daryl said, it's been dribs and drabs and going on, and you know, it starts with the mailbox, and how many years later we are still talking about this. I think that the community really, to heal in this regard, this needs to be settled one way or another. So I hope by next year it's POW. It won't, we'll probably be talking about it, but maybe it'll be over.
I don't think it'll be over, but it's something to hope for.
That's a wish list,
yeah.
but that's okay. Wish list is good.
We talked about this earlier, so I'm kind of cribbing this answer, but I'm really hoping that by this time next year we'll actually see some traction on the homeless issue. I think there's some real hard realities that still have to be faced. These people who are still homeless, many of them are so chronic. I don't know the end solution for them, but I'd like to see us have places to shelter these people at the very least, along with their dogs and their bikes and everything else. You know, I just want to see, we dedicated a lot of resources at our station to covering the homeless issue, and we talk about it every single day. So for me personally, I'd like to not be talking about it every single day.
Spencer?
You know, wishful thinking, because, you know, the cynical part of me is saying this, you know, we're gonna be talking about this for the next 20 years. But certainly I'd actually, and let me just spin this just a little, I'd actually, you know, in a hypothetical scenario, would like not to see truth to power stories. I would like to have a world in which we wouldn't have to do that.
Because that would be the norm?
You know, one would hope that we live in a world in which, you know, power doesn't need to be spoken truth to. That good people, you know, people with integrity, you know, are coming together, building a community, building a space.
Well, let me jump in here for just a second, because we're going to have to go in a moment,
yeah.
but we just sort of touched on earlier net neutrality. And today we've seen that a lot of the net neutrality that was built over the last, you know, 10 years is going to be rolled back. So
Well,
it sounds like we're going to be talking about truth to power in some way or some form with that.
We'll see. Their New York Attorney General, just minutes after they announced the FCC decision, said, "Oh, I'm suing," you know. And so I think this is not the end of the net neutrality story. We will see more, but you know, I can still hope.
All right, Daryl, very quickly, what is it that you hope we won't be talking about?
I actually agree on the homeless issue, because I did something one night where I searched up on Google, why is Hawaii? And I let it finish the sentence. And one of the options was, why does Hawaii have so many homeless people? And I don't want that to be a thing that people know Hawaii for, like, oh, Hawaii, a lot of homeless people, see them on the street. So I really hope that they do take some more initiative to clean it up, or at least give us a better outlook from other states and countries.
Anything specific that you would love to see happen with that?
I just want to see them helped, not moved or like scattered across the island from places that just get more camera time, per se. Like, they're probably cleaning more of the metropolitan area so that when tourists come to see it, they don't see all the homeless people, so they're getting swept to the other side of the island. I want them to be helped, yes, more affordable housing, and yeah, more initiatives just to help them rather than just moving the problem somewhere else.
Well, I want to thank all of you for spending the last hour, and all of you too for being here. Mahalo to everyone for joining us and for being with us for Insights as we wrap up another year. We want to thank our guests, Yunji Nies, Spencer Oshita, Daryl Huff, and Rebecca Meyer. During the next several weeks, we'll bring you special programming for the holidays during this time period. Insights will be back on January 11th to take a look at tourism. With another record-breaking year for visitor arrivals, have we reached our capacity to safely and efficiently manage our rising visitor count? Are we reinvesting in the resources stretched to accommodate this boom in tourism? We'll have that show for you on January 11th. On behalf of everyone at PBS Hawaii, we wish you a safe, healthy, and a wonderful holiday season. Please accept our sincere appreciation for your support. I'm Beth-Ann Kozlovich for Insights on PBS Hawaii. A hui hou, happy holidays, and a peaceful 2018.